Welcome back to So What Does That Mean? The podcast where we break down engineering, planning, and construction in plain English. I'm Brendan from JC Engineers.
And I'm Jo. If you're a developer, builder, homeowner, or just someone trying to make sense of the construction world, you're in the right place.
Every episode, we take a topic that costs people real money, real time, and real stress, and we unpack it so you actually understand what's going on, why it matters, and what you can do about it.
No jargon walls, no lectures, just practical, common sense advice from the people who see these problems every single day. Okay, Brendan, this one's going to ruffle some feathers. Everyone loves the Olympics. Brisbane 2032 is going to be amazing for the city, for the state, and for the country. But you're saying there's a cost to all of this that nobody's really talking about, and it's already hitting people's projects right now.
Look, I'm not anti-Olympics. Let me be really clear about that. But I am pro-honesty. And the honest truth is that the Olympics are creating a gravitational pull on resources, labour and costs in South East Queensland that is already affecting every project in the region, whether you're building a stadium or a granny flat. And I think people need to understand that so that they can plan accordingly.
All right, let's put some numbers on this, because I think most people think of the Olympics as something that's happening in 2032, 6 years away. Why should we care about it now?
Because the construction for the Olympics doesn't happen in 2032. It happens in the years leading up to 2032. And the ramp up has already begun. Queensland's construction pipeline is forecast to grow from $53 billion in 24-25 to $77 billion in 26-27. That's a 45% increase in 2 years. And a huge chunk of that growth is games-related infrastructure, venues, fleet villages, and sport upgrades, urban renewal projects.
$77 billion in a single year. That's huge.
It is enormous. And here's the problem. We don't have the workforce to deliver it. Construction Skills Queensland forecasts a peak demand of 156,000 construction workers in Queensland in 26-27. The estimated shortfall, an average of 18,200 workers per year over the next 8 years, peaking at 50,000 workers short in 26-27. 50,000 workers that we need and don't have.
50,000? Where are they supposed to come from?
That's the billion-dollar question. And Infrastructure Australia is projecting something even bigger at a national level. A shortfall of 300,000 workers across Australia's building and construction industry by mid-27. 300,000. And the housing industry estimates we need 83,000 more tradies just to meet the National Housing Accord target of 1.2 million homes by 2029. So you've got the Olympics competing with the housing crisis for the same limited pool of workers. Something has to give.
And when you say something has to give, what actually gives? What happens in practice?
Prices go up. That's what gives first. Writer Levett Bucknall, one of the most respected cost consultancies in the country, forecasts construction cost growth in 2026 of 5% in Brisbane and 5.5% on the Gold Coast. Those are higher than Sydney and Melbourne. And they specifically note that Olympic-related construction is expected to further intensify cost growth in Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and Townsville in coming years. So it's not speculation. The quantity surveyors are already pricing it in.
5.5% doesn't sound that dramatic, though. Is it really that big of a deal?
On its own, maybe not. But remember, this is compounding. 5% this year on top of the 45% cumulative increase over the past 5 years that the Productivity Commission has already documented. On a $500,000 build, 5% is $25,000. On a $2 million subdivision civil works package, it's $100,000. And these increases are hitting at the same time as the fuel shock we already discussed in episode 15, which is adding another 7 to 7.5% across the board. So you're stacking Olympics-driven cost pressure on top of fuel-driven cost pressure on top of 4 years of post-COVID escalation. The cumulative effect is severe.
Okay, that is a much scarier picture when you stack it all up like that.
And here's the part that really matters for our listeners. RLB specifically identified a 6 to 12 month window starting from late 2025 for well-prepared projects to move quickly into tender and secure resources before capacity tightens again. They said this is most evident in South East Queensland. That window is closing. Once the games-related projects ramp up in earnest and start pulling contractors and subcontractors onto priority government work, the residential and private development sector gets squeezed. Harder to find contractors, longer wait times, higher prices, less competition.
And there's also the data center issue, right? I've been reading about these massive AI data centers going up and competing for the same trades.
Absolutely. There is a new pressure that barely existed 2 years ago. In Western Sydney alone, there are 88 data centers built or planned. One facility in Marsden Park will draw more electricity than 140,000 homes. Nationally, data center construction is pulling heavily on electricians, mechanical engineers, and high voltage specialists, trades that overlap significantly with general construction. Local councils have actually raised concerns that the data center development is crowding out housing delivery. So you've got the Olympics and AI data centers both pulling from the same finite pool of workers that we desperately need for housing.
So let me make sure I've got these numbers correct. Queensland's construction pipeline going from 53 billion to 77 billion, 50,000 workers shortfall at its peak, 300,000 shortfall nationally, 5 to a 5.5% cost growth in South East Queensland, a 6 to 12 month window for prepared projects before it tightens, and data centers adding another layer of pressure on top.
That's the landscape. And the message isn't don't build. The message is build smart. The projects that get through this squeeze will be the ones that are properly documented, properly approved, and ready to go when a contractor is available. Sitting on incomplete plans, waiting for things to get cheaper, is the worst strategy right now. It's only getting more expensive.
So when you say the Olympics is like a tax, what do you actually mean by that? It's not like people are getting a bill in the mail.
No, it's an indirect tax. You pay it through higher construction costs, longer waiting times, reduced contractor availability, and less competition at tender. Every major government infrastructure project absorbs labour and contractor capacity that would otherwise be available for private work. The Olympics is unique because of its hard deadline. You can't delay the opening ceremony. So government projects will pay whatever it takes to stay on schedule, and that pulls resources away from private projects that don't have that urgency. The RLB data already shows that post-COVID mega project overruns in Victoria inflated baseline costs across the entire state. The same dynamic will play out in Queensland, but amplified. It's not personal, it's physics. You can't pour from an empty cup, and the construction workforce cup is already running dry.
What about the argument that the Olympics brings investment and growth? Surely that's a net positive.
Long term, probably yes. Better transport, urban renewal, global attention on Brisbane and South East Queensland. But short to medium term, the construction sector bears a disproportional cost. The benefits flow to tourism, hospitality, property values after the Games. The pain is felt right now by anyone trying to build. The challenge is that 11 of the 17 Olympic venues are still going through detailed business case processes as of mid-2025. So the full scope of construction demand isn't even defined yet. It could be bigger. The Olympics will be great for Queensland, but people planning projects need to factor in the reality of what it's doing to the market right now, not in 2033.
So what's the practical advice for someone in South East Queensland who's planning a build or a development right now?
Act now, not later. If your project is ready or close to ready, the RLB window is still open but closing. Get your documentation finalised, your approval sorted, and get to tender. If you're 12 months out, use that time to get your documentation to a level where contractors want to build it. Complete, coordinated, no grey areas. In a tight market, contractors pick the projects with the least risk and the cleanest documentation. Budget using today's costs, plus a realistic escalation factor. 5% minimum for South East Queensland in 2026, compounding. Don't use last year's numbers. Consider staging your project. If your development has multiple phases, getting the first phase to market while contractors are still competing gives you a cost advantage over waiting to do everything at once. The Olympics is coming whether you're ready or not. The question is whether you've positioned your project to succeed in the market it's creating, or whether you're going to be competing with government projects that have deeper pockets and harder deadlines.
All right, so if you're in South East Queensland and you've got a project on the drawing board, what's the one thing you should do this week?
Get your documentation sorted. Seriously. The difference between a project that gets built on time and on budget and one that sits in a queue for 18 months waiting on a contractor, that difference is almost always the quality of the documentation. Clean plans, resolved approvals, coordinated design. That's what gets you in front of the line.
And JCE can help with that, obviously.
That's literally what we do. We make sure your project is the one contractors want to price, want to build, and can deliver without surprises. That's never been more valuable than it is right now.
If you found this useful, share it with someone who's building or developing in South East Queensland. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
And keep the topics coming. Hit us up on the website or our socials. Cheers, everyone.
See you next time.